Welcome to the Cincy Postcast. I'm your host, Kevin Wallace, and before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Streetside Brewery, one of the best Cincinnati brewery you will find around. They are doing some awesome stuff over in the Columbia Tusculum neighborhood over on the east side of Cincinnati. A really, really great place. You gotta check them out. There's always a ton of stuff happening over at the tap room, including coming up this week, you've got a big sports weekend over at Streetside. You've got the Queen City Fulham watch party on August 24th. They're watching Fulham take on Leicester City. Sunday morning, you've got Formula One watch party for the Dutch Grand Prix. That's kicking off at 9 a.m. They have live music Saturday night from 7 to 10. They got music again on Sunday night from 3 to 6. It is an awesome place to go check them out. And when you are over there checking out all there is to do and all the events there, tell them we sent you. Tell them the Cincy Postcast sent you over there, and they will knock $1 off of each beer you are buying over at the tap room. Really great deal for listeners of the Postcast. So please go check them out, Streetside Brewery, or check them out, wherever you're buying beer at your next place. And enjoy their beers. You will not find a bad one. I promise you that. Thank you again to Streetside for sponsoring this episode. And on today's episode, we are talking about, a Cincinnati legend, hanging him up, but we spend most of the first part talking about the incredibly insightful press conference from general manager Chris Albright. It is very rare to get a glimpse into the workings of a front office like this. Where is their mindset? How do they view this team? How do they view the window? You've heard us whine and complain about this. We've seen fans debate how this window went for the last couple of days, couple of weeks. It's really interesting to see and hear what Chris Albright and their staff thinks over at FC Cincinnati. Super insightful stuff there. Then in part two, of course, we're back at it. Matches are coming up. Inter Miami looms. How do we feel about FCC going into this one? What does this game mean for the Supporter Shield race, for MLS Cup? So much more. Everything on the line. Put it all together. You got yourselves one heck of a welcome back to MLS regular season play postcast. Joining me to talk about all of that and more, I've got two gentlemen who have just barely finished drying their eyes before we hit the record button. Joined by the Chief, joined by Grayson. Chief, it's a sad, dark day in the city of Cincinnati, I think. Maybe it's not a dark day, but this is a sad day in the city of Cincinnati.
Sad? No, I don't know that I would say it's sad. It's, I don't know. Joey Votto announced his retirement today.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I was prepared for how I was going to feel about this. And so I made the take online, and I think I stand by this, that he is the best player to wear a Cincinnati uniform in my lifetime.
No.
I think the only people he's in competition for with that would be Anthony Munoz, Barry Larkin, and Lucho Acosta.
So if you mean as a Cincinnati player.
Yeah, the best player.
Yeah, because Griffey, right? But Griffey was not a great Red. He was a great player.
I don't think of him as a Cincinnati player. I don't think of Ken Griffey Jr. as if you ask me to picture Ken Griffey Jr., even as a Reds fan, I still picture him on the cover of Ken Griffey Jr.'s winning run for the Super Nintendo in the Mariners uniform. That's Griffey, Mariners hat backwards. But if you tell me to picture someone who is a Cincinnati professional athlete, I don't know. I think those are the three. I think it's Munoz. I think it's Votto, and I think it's Larkin, at least in my lifetime.
Yeah. I mean,
and I guess if you want to be super stupid about it, yeah, I was alive at the end of Pete Rose's career, but A, he's a scumbag, and B, I have no memory of Pete Rose playing.
Right.
So for me, and I this is why I don't like this kind of chatter. Like I would rather just appreciate Joey for who he is.
No, we got to make it a competition.
I'd like to immediately make it a competition.
Yeah, we're doing a Mount Rushmore. It happens.
Like for me, Larkin's ahead of him.
Ooh.
But I was much more cognizant of the world around me through Joey Votto's career.
Right.
So Joey Votto, I have much more memory of Joey Votto as a Red. And so unquestionably, he's the Cincinnati athlete who I have the fondest association with. So as far as who I was when I as far as I've been an engaged observer.
Right. But when you say Larkin, it brings me to the point where when you say it's a sad day, I think the argument for Larkin is that he won a title while he was here. And to me, that's where it hurts as a Joey Votto fan and a Reds fan, is that he was this just incredible, transcendent, one of the probably top 20 hitters, pure hitters in the history of the game. And because of bad ownership decisions and the random chance of being in Cincinnati your entire career, he never won a title. Larkin won his title before spending and everything went to hell. If you go back and you look at what the payrolls were in Major League Baseball the year the Reds went wire to wire in 1990, the discrepancy between the biggest spending teams and the Reds, it was a couple $1,000,000. It wasn't baseball salaries hadn't gone to hell at that point. And so Votto plays his entire career during an era where the Reds are grossly outspent. They're mismanaged during a lot of those years. And the one chance he has to really make a run, they just run into a Giants team that's on an all-time heater in 2012. And he never makes a World Series in his career. Well, and that sucks because I think
that's not entirely fair. Johnny Cueto threw out his back 3 pitches into game 1 of that series.
Yeah, that was tough.
If Johnny
that was Cueto, tough. They still won that game though. They still won that game. Still won,
but it threw off the whole rotation, and they didn't get to throw, and they didn't get to roll Johnny Cueto out again. Right. Because Latos, people forget
pretty good that year.
That he was really good that year.
Yeah, vitamin S is a hell of a thing.
He had a really nice little stretch. So if you get to roll out, Cueto twice and Latos once, you feel pretty good.
They should have won that game Homer Bailey threw in game 3. Yep. I want to say where he goes 8 2/3 of 1 run, 10 strikeout ball.
Yeah, they should have. So I don't think the argument for Barry Larkin is that he won a championship. I think that it helps his argument. I think the argument for Barry Larkin is that his hitting stats aren't that far off of Votto's. And he was also a 3-time Gold Glove winning shortstop.
I think the argument for Larkin is also that he's a Cincinnati kid. He went to Moeller. His brother is the all-time.
You don't have to go there. You could just say he had a better career average than Joey. He had more runs, stole a lot of bases, hit for power for a shortstop, but also was a Gold Glove quality shortstop.
Yeah. Votto's advanced.
That's not.
Votto cleans up on advanced metrics though. Votto's on base percentage.
Larkin's got more WAR.
Yeah, that is though that Votto is the sabermetrics first ballot Hall of Famer, unanimous guy.
I agree as a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I'm not going to sit here and let people undersell how good Barry Larkin was and just be like, oh, he won a championship.
I'm not denigrating Barry Larkin.
He's
really good.
I think he was the first.
Votto is better.
I think he was the first shortstop to go 30-30.
He was.
He won. He was also an MVP.
He was the National League MVP in
Yeah,
1995. Yes.
And he would have won more Gold Gloves if it wasn't for playing at the same time as Ozzie Smith.
12-time All-Star.
Yeah, but that's also the case for Votto. Votto would have won more Gold Gloves if he wasn't playing at the same time as Albert Pujols.
I do not care about Gold Glove at first base. I do not care about Gold Glove at first base.
Hey, you all have to field your position, okay? The first baseman touches the ball. The first baseman touches the ball more than any other player, not the catcher and the batter, sir.
Gold Glove at first base is a silly little thing. But
it's tough.
Larkin's also an all-star across 3 decades, 80s, 90s, and 2000s.
I'm not denigrating Barry Larkin. Like, I think Larkin is a great player, no doubt. But Votto has the thing with him where he had an unquestionable thing that he was one of the best all time at, and he is one of the best, universally acknowledged, one of the best all time hitters. Like I said, anyone that knows ball is going to tell you that Joey Votto was the best pure hitter of his generation. He's a top 20 hitter all time. His career comps are insane on types of hitter he was before he tailed off in the last year or so of his career.
Any baseball writer who doesn't vote for Joey Votto has to immediately declare how they voted on Edgar Martinez.
Ooh.
I agree with that. There's so many dumb motherfuckers that vote for the Hall of Fame. Just stodgy old just pricks. And like, it bothers me that Votto will probably be an uphill battle to get into the Hall. Because I really want to I want to go to his Hall of Fame induction in Cooperstown.
Because he doesn't have some of the counting stats.
Right. He's not a 500 home run hitter. He's not a 3,000 hit guy. Like, you have to look at the advanced metrics.
He's not a lifetime 300 guy.
Yeah.
That's why, like, I was really rooting back in the day for Adam Dunn to hit 500 home runs. He came really close. I think he's got like 450 something or 460 something. Because once you hit 500 home runs, I think there's only like one dude or two dudes with 500 home runs who aren't Hall of Famers. And I would have just loved that conversation of just the dumbest person you know.
Those guys are probably like steroid.
Essential
like steroid boycotts.
Like
right?
walking pharmacies are the only people that don't have like Hall of Fame plaques that have 500 home runs.
But yeah, I think it's impossible, really, I think, to quantify what Joey Votto has meant as a Red, and to also quantify like how poorly the organization served him through his career.
Yes.
I mean, one thing he does have in common with Larkin is the organization just like dumping them on the curb.
Yeah.
Instead of giving them like a nice send off. I think we said on this, I said on this podcast, or I've definitely said many, many times that like, I didn't see why they couldn't just bring Joey back for the year. They weren't going to do anything.
Or like,
they didn't spend the money. They didn't spend, his, whatever his salary was and get a difference maker.
Right.
And so now he's going to retire out of the fucking Blue Jays minor league system.
Right. Like, you couldn't tell me that, like, once it became obvious he wasn't going to get called up from the Blue Jays, you couldn't have just put in, like, sent $50,000 in cash to the Blue Jays or $1 and trade him back and let him join your minor league organization. When the rosters expand in September, let him come up, give him one last at bat at Great American Ballpark on the last day of the year. Who gives a shit? Let him giving a standing ovation. It defines the least you could do for a player that was, in many years, the only reason you came out to the ballpark was to see Joey Votto play.
If you're going to suck, and the Reds have chosen to suck for years, at least let us go see our guys.
Right.
Like,
for the years that he played for the Reds, he is basically the only thing that was like worth having pride in as a Reds fan.
You're right.
There were other good
Brandon
players
a little bit for there, who also they kind of did dirty.
Right.
I also have this theory about Brandon Phillips too, that Brandon Phillips helped Joey Votto out a ton, because when Joey was early in his career, Joey was very uncomfortable with attention being paid to him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he wanted to do his thing. He was a grinder in the cage. He just wanted to play ball. And like in any other position, you would have to be the face of the franchise if you were Joey Votto. And it just didn't seem like he was ready for that at where he was in his development as a player and as a person. And during those years, Brandon Phillips was more than happy to be the person that was front and center, signing the autographs, doing the media appearances. And it let Joey sort of find his place a little bit as a leader in the game and as a leader for the franchise. And when he finally emerged and started showing his personality off, dude, the team, what he did for this team to paper over the fact that they were non-competitive for the majority of his career, just by sheer force of goodwill, you can't put a price tag on that. It was so, you know, dressing up like a Mountie, going into the broadcast booth at the end of the year and doing color commentary in seasons where he wasn't finishing out. Dude was a content machine down the stretch, just so good, and just got it at a level few baseball players ever do in their career, few athletes ever do in their career.
Yeah.
You know what's funny about this too is that the trauma of Joey Votto, it feels interesting that this is happening right now, because like I think this trauma informs a little bit of, I don't want this to happen to Lucho. Or it's the same way I don't want this to happen to Joe Burrow. I'm not even a Bengals fan, but like I don't want this to happen to Joe Burrow. And this is
that's
happening
in progress.
I know, and it sucks. Like there are these players that come along, and this city, like for a mid-market city, we've been blessed with a lot of these players concurrently. You know, Burrow on the Bengals, Lucho. We're in the process of doing it to Ellie De La Cruz now with the Reds. And it's like
they couldn't wait to do it to Jonathan India.
Yeah.
Who's like not really like on the level of like De La Cruz or Votto, but like, man, you want to talk about like a good soldier for the club that they just want to toss out with the garbage as soon as they possibly can. It's so frustrating.
Rookie of the year. What can we get for him?
Rookie of the year. And like people spot him around town all the time. He's such a great guy. He put on the Viking hat and pulled the sword at man, was it the whatever game it was last year?
It was when vibes were like the highest of the season last year, like straight up. You know what separates, I think, Burrow, Votto, and I'll throw Costa in there now. I really will. Is that you very much get the sense with those guys. It's like we talked about this a really long time ago, and I really do believe this sort of informs my sports fandom. And that's that as a sports fan, all I want to do is believe it matters to you as much as it matters to me. Mm-hmm. And I want to believe that you care about the team you're playing on as much as I do out in the crowd. Just make me believe this lie that it matters to you if Cincinnati accomplishes something, that it's more than a paycheck to you. And with Votto, I don't know that was a lie. Like, he chose to play here. He could have demanded a trade at any point. He could have chosen not to sign his big contract extension here. He would have gotten a ton of money on the market if he wanted to go out there with the numbers he was putting up. Burrow has chosen to stay here. He could have said, you know what? The hell with it. I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to go get the biggest deal I can in free agency, or do the Kirk Cousins thing, where every year you're going to have to franchise tag me every single year.
I mean, Burrow still can, right? We'll see how his career.
Well, he signed his extension.
Yeah, but you know.
Yeah. No, he could eventually. Right. Or like Lucho signed an extension here. Like Lucho, like these are players that have chosen Cincinnati when like there would be opportunities to go elsewhere. And when players do that, when they're like, yeah, I'm planting my flag here in Cincinnati, like Votto did. God, it just, I want the teams to do right by these guys. Like when you've chosen to forsake or swear off going to a bigger market or chase a bigger payday someplace else, we got to win. You got to win with these guys. You've got to do something while they're here.
Yeah. At least show you're trying, right? Like the Reds, you can't say ever tried. The Bengals look like they're trying there for a second, but
we'll see. They still might be.
Yeah.
Right. They do things in their own way, but I will say I'll give the credit to the Bengals over the Reds in this way. Like if you want to go back like through this century, the Bengals have been in the playoffs a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I mean, like they haven't, gone for it in the way like LA did when they beat us in the Super Bowl. But the Bengals have kind of stuck to a philosophy and been more good than bad. Yes. I think it's fair to say.
Yes.
For close to 25 years.
Yeah. At least since Marvin Lewis showed up, that was, yeah.
And, it's not like they've been just like middle of the pack that time, right? Like it's the NFL playoffs are a little harder to make than like the MLS playoffs.
Right.
And I think FC Cincinnati is doing right and doing everything right that they can. I think they're trying, clearly. I think that they are attempting to build a quality team, but like that fear in the background of shit, we're doing it again. I can't shake that. Like I've been hurt by the Reds specifically. I continue to be hurt by the Reds in this regard. And so, when you've spent your entire life basically watching the Reds punt at the trade deadline, where a starting pitcher or an impact bat would have possibly gotten this team over the hump and into the playoffs and you never know what happens when you get into the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
That many trade deadlines that come and go with the best you're getting is Gary Majeski and Bill Bray. When you get like the summer transfer window, like it's the haunting Reds, Mr. Redlegs right behind you, just grinning. And it's like, oh my God, we're doing it again.
Right. And I think that also in part adds to like the dread or the feeling that you have when a window like the one we just had happens. Right. Because, I mean, not to mince words or like retread on, well-worn, newly replaced turf. But
wait a second.
But like, there's a, we talked about like the feeling about, did they do everything they could this window and whatever. And then the feeling that like, you have, if you're willing to get that extra step, you're in a championship window. Have you squandered that? Those are, given our experience in other sports, like very understandable feelings and things that we have talked through and worked through. But I think that what makes this one different from any trade deadlines you may have lived under with like the Reds is Chris Albright gave I think, very open, very frank, very, I don't know if I want to say like refreshing or assuring.
I'll
but
say it.
Just
refreshing.
Yeah,
it was refreshing.
It was a good press conference, and it's the exact kind of thing I think that it's one of the kinds of things that have consistently set FC Cincinnati apart from a team like the Reds.
Yeah. And I want to say that was refreshing. It was refreshing Albright did it. I want to give hats off to all the people in the local media that attended and asked really good questions.
Yes.
And got the information out there. And yeah, it is refreshing that a Cincinnati sports general manager came out and just let you know what's going on, where the head's at, and didn't mince words. What was funny about all this is that they have this press conference, and the two things that were happening was that Chris Albright's having a press conference, and they're introducing Nicholas Gioacchini as the new signing. And by virtue of doing these at the same time, it puts Albright in the position of saying, oh, yeah, here's Gioacchini. He wasn't our fifth choice, but everybody give him a nice round of applause anyway. And so just it was so awesome. And hats off to Albright. We're going to talk about what was revealed. Hats off to Gioacchini for taking that in stride, as all the questions are about the people that didn't show up as opposed to the guy that did.
I don't think we're going to talk a lot about what Gioacchini said.
No, I don't think anyone cares what Gioacchini.
So I do want to say that, he's for a guy of his young age, he does seem to have a lot of poise. He's very well spoken. He seemed to be able, he seemed like a very thoughtful guy, and he did a nice job of communicating how this is a good loan for everybody involved. And at the very least, he does seem to have a really great mentality, and he seems very focused. So we'll see how that translates to, his play. But I thought it was a pretty impressive introductory press conference.
Yeah. One little tiny thing on the Gioacchini thing, I find it very funny that Como went out and got a guy from Real Madrid, it looks like, to replace Gioacchini on the roster. So that was funny. But yeah, maybe I misheard Albright. I assume I did, but it sounded like he said, and if he said this, hats off to him. I'm impressed, but I assume I misheard him. And he said Gioacchini wasn't even our plan Z. That's what I heard. I assume he said plan C.
C, I think, was what he was going for.
But wasn't even our plan Z is so funny.
Right. If he wasn't plan Z, there are 23 other names that Tom Bogert needs to get figuring out as to who else was on the transfer list.
Right.
Where do you want to start with this press conference? Because I thought there was so much that was fascinating about this, and we rarely get insight like this from FC Cincinnati. I'd love to see this be an annual thing.
Yes.
But
we did. I liked, so I'll start here. I liked that there was no pretense, as Kevin mentioned, about like there not be like he wasn't even the plan C.
Yeah.
It was, I think Albright said, they got left at the altar, and he and Gioacchini, confirmed that like the whole thing happened within a day.
Yeah.
Like Albright said he was down in Miami, moving his daughter into college.
Yeah.
And he took the call from a parking lot in his car.
In a Target parking lot.
Target parking lot in his car.
You got to get the MLS sponsor plug in there.
That was good.
And Gioacchini being, I guess, sufficiently sold on it to sign off within a day. I mean, I think all that tells you all you need to know.
Yeah.
About how it came off, but.
Chief, I was going to say, Chief, I think it also speaks to something that you've brought up in the past, which is Albright recruiting a lot of Americans. And I think immediately finding somebody with familiarity with MLS is key, because you don't need to sell him on Cincinnati immediately. He probably knows Cincinnati won the league last year, was one of the best teams in the league, is a highly regarded team. Some, random kid from, Slovakia doesn't know that, right? Like it takes a little bit of convincing to explain what's going on there.
Yeah, no, in the timeline, what's interesting about that is, so to sort of, back this up just a bit, we have the article from Tom Bogert that we all read. We talked about in the last episode. He had names in the article. He had names McKennie, Sargent, and Bertarame. Albright didn't mention any of the names in this press conference. It wouldn't be proper for him to do that, especially if they're targets that are ongoing But he also said the reporting out there is accurate.
Very accurate.
Very accurate. And then by saying the timeline for the Joachini signing, you're also confirming a lot of the other stuff that Bogert reported. Like, well, why was it that you were in a Target parking lot trying to pitch this kid on coming to Cincinnati, coming back from Serie A now with the promotion? And yeah, it's because Berterame backed out of the deal about 48 hours before the end of the transfer window or somewhere around there. And yeah, it's interesting. They pivoted really quickly. I get the sense from listening to you can read between the lines in Joachini's comments and in Albright's comments that Joachini was probably told by Como, there's not a lot of minutes in your future. You might want to get out if the opportunity presents itself. It's a pretty good opportunity. You're coming back to MLS. It's a league he knows well. He's an American, which means that actually getting back here is not a sweat. There's going to be no visa issues getting him back. If you're looking to bring someone back and you're looking to make a transfer on very, very short turnaround, yeah, an American is probably the only option that's going to get done really quickly, especially one that it sounds like they hadn't even been talking to. Like all these other deals they cut at the last minute, they're people that they've been talking to for months, and it's a hold up on, personal terms, or it's a hold up on your team has got us and they're not going to take anything less than $3 million. We're going to offer $2 million. And like with Shakhtar Donetsk or whatever, it's like, oh, it takes down to the last second before they finally realize a loan. But they've been talking to Kelsey for months. Right. This guy met Chris Albright on the phone 24 hours before he's on a plane coming back to Ohio.
Yeah.
You have to pretty much have an American to do that.
Yeah. Albright said 20 or 12, and then he stopped himself and said 24 hours. And my read on that was they spent 12 hours scouting what they could and 12 hours recruiting once they had identified their guy.
which would make you would love to be a fly on the wall in that room where like this would be all-time content for social media or whatever, is that the episode starts as Albright hangs the phone up, having found out that Berterame isn't coming, and then just bellows out the loudest fuck you have ever heard. There's a deep breath, and then it's like, okay, now what? And what does that process look like where it's like, do they have like a wall of people where it's like the emergency wall of we start calling these people, we just go in order to see the first person that answers their phone?
I assume
you're on such a tight timeline that if someone doesn't pick the phone up, you don't have time to wait for a callback. You've got to move to the next dude on the list.
It's Apollo 13, but instead of spaceship parts, it's all like little scraps of scouting reports of like other guys they saw while scouting other teams, and they're dumping out piles of notes and say, all right, somewhere in here we've got to make a striker. Go.
This would be the only time it would be appropriate to do the Toronto FC thing of get on Transfer Market and just sort by American strikers and just see who's out there.
American strikers playing in Europe. What do we got? And
oh yeah, I remember this guy. Boom. Give him a call.
I do want so somebody who came like kind of immediately to mind is like, I would love to know if there was any contact with Matthew Hoppe.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying I would like prefer him. In fact, I wouldn't. I think probably Joachini is better. But like Matthew Hoppe also feels like one of those guys, like an American guy abroad who you're just like what's that guy up to? Like a Caleb Stanko profile.
Oh, do you know where Matthew Hoppe is? This is a really good call. Do you know what he's doing? He plays for the San Jose Earthquakes.
Does he?
He's on loan from Middlesbrough. He was there last year. He's there this year.
I don't think so. It looks like he's playing in Premier League 2.
Oh, did they recall him?
Middlesbrough.
Oh, well.
Middlesbrough.
His Wikipedia hasn't been updated.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it looks like he had one appearance and one assist in Premier League 2.
Look at him go.
Which I think is like a youth league So
it is. It's like for the academy teams.
He probably shouldn't be there.
Is he playing against like 6-year-olds? It's just Matthew, just like throwing kids aside.
I think it's the Premier League MLS Next Pro, but yes.
So
really
he
fun.
has
It's
something
like-
in common with Joe Aquini, that they're both Gold Cup winners.
Wow.
They won the same Gold Cup. They were on the same Gold Cup team,
Gold Cup kick.
2021.
Wow.
So what else from Albright's press conference stood out to you?
I got a couple things.
I've got a bunch
All
of
right.
quotes here, so I'm happy to read some.
Yeah,
But
so I
Grayson, what do you
gotta-
got?
So I have I have three. Potentially, like, one of these quotes is really fucking long. So it's potentially like 5. But
Okay.
I have I'll start with this one. Okay.
All
So
right.
we had asked the question, or Carter. So we had discussed, and Carter, independently from his own thought, asked the question about maybe, like, is this not because of injuries? Is this not the window that, or not the season that maybe the championship window that maybe you thought it was? And there was a bit of focusing on next year.
Great
Yeah.
minds.
And Albright said, look, it's to what degree we're a championship team. That's for Vegas to decide. We go in games every week as the favorite, or most weeks as the favorite. And most recently, we've lost some of those games. So you're still betting on yourself in a one-off that you can maybe be that team that's not favored in the game. And that's what sports are. And we weren't so decimated that we thought, let's throw those plans out the window. When this isn't a championship window, we still feel like we have a championship caliber team. And so we're going to continue to address the team like that's a reality. And that's, I was trying to type it while he was speaking it. So like maybe it's a little like we're missing some ums and so's and likes here and there. But I think I have like 2 takeaways. Like one is like, I think there's an acknowledgement that they didn't do as much as you would like to keep pace with the top contenders. Right? Because there's that line in there where he says, so you're still betting on yourself in a one-off that you can maybe be that team that's not favored in the game. Right?
Yeah.
And like that feels like a very realistic kind of admission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You go
But
into
there's
the
about
playoffs as the 3 seed. Yeah, you're not the favorite to win that tournament, but there's no reason to think you can't win that tournament.
Or the idea that there's like 4 or 5 teams out there that are just better than you, that you are going to be the underdog at. But in a knockout style tournament, you just have to get them once.
Yep. And but the takeaway, but the last sentence there that I read, he said, we still feel like we have a championship caliber team, and so we're going to continue to address the team like that's a reality. I also think that's right.
Yeah.
Like I still think the team is capable of winning MLS Cup or winning any other trophy you put in front of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It may feel like a taller task when you look comparatively, but like NYCFC won MLS Cup a couple years ago, right? And like they weren't on paper or by anybody's estimation the best team in the league.
Yeah.
No.
Seattle's done that multiple times now.
I mean, Crew were not.
Yeah.
Crew were like we're well behind us.
Yeah, objectively behind us. Similar note, and I apologize if you had this one written down, but it kind of speaks to that same point. Similar quote, he said, I think we positioned ourselves where we're in the trophy conversation to start the year, and we don't shy away from that now. So they don't see a trophy as unattainable or this is not our year, we'll get them next year. That's not the messaging coming out of this.
No, and frankly, it shouldn't be. I mean, they shouldn't be having that thought that, oh, it's not for us, or if it happens, it happens. This is a team that it's the defending Supporters Shield champions. They're a team that they've They've got a lot of good players on this team. They have underachieved significantly, I would say, over the last couple of weeks. They've got to do better. They know they've got to do better. And, we've said it before that the goal is to be hot and healthy when it comes time for the cup. And nothing else matters in service of that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you look during the summer. It doesn't matter how you look during the fall. It matters how you look when the MLS Cup playoffs start. And it matters how healthy you stay. It matters how your players are available. You can be that team where you're the underdog going into the match. But if your opposition has a star caliber player that does something stupid and gets themselves suspended, and then the rest of the team gets sick, yeah, you're going to beat that team. You just have to be there.
I just want to say hot and healthy is also how I like my coffee. So thank you.
Always.
Grayson, what was your second call out?
I think if you got some you want to mention, because I think my other takeaways we can probably hit a little later.
Yeah. So there was one theme. I'll read a couple of these quotes that spoke to the same idea and definitely touches on something that we've talked about already on this. We assumed that we were going to have a championship window coming into this season and probably next season and maybe the one after that. And later on, he said, I think we're on a 2 to 3 year window here with a lot of guys in their prime playing at a high level. So I take that to mean if you're looking for your Lucho championship window, they're saying at least next year, the year after, and maybe the year after that. We'll see how healthy everybody stays. But FCC leadership is looking at this as being including this year. Well, if you want to include last year, this year, they're looking at a 4-year window of which we're about halfway through.
And isn't this so much more fun to talk about in terms of windows than the last time we had a GM talk about 2 to 3 windows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did feel like it was. I felt like the message was like pretty confidently encompassing 2026.
Okay.
And he also didn't say like we won't have a window after. He just said there'll be need to kind of remake the roster because it was based primarily on like who's under contract, right? And obviously Lucho.
Yeah.
Hitting Lucho's prime. There's another quote where he said, related to it, we think we're as competitive as anyone when you think about next year. And in that context, he mentioned specifically like the center backs currently in the roster are better than, anybody in MLS has and potentially has ever had.
Yeah.
And I don't know if now's the time to like talk about this. It's probably not time to go like deep into it, but he did mention in that context when they talked about the going the DP model, the U22 model. Yeah. He mentioned that they recruit a lot of quote high TAM guys, unquote, and that going the U22 model gives them more GAM to keep the team more together. I don't know that we need to belabor that point.
Yeah.
Really. It's just something that he observed.
Definitely more of a winter conversation, but I will say related to that, there was another quote. We're being a little bit more aggressive in some of the inner workings of the salary cap than maybe we would if we were having a 5-year plan. So I think that's interesting that they basically are in a win now mode. That's what they're telling us. They're not trying to shed contracts and get free agency lined up so that we can have a big 2025.
But not so win now. That they're willing to tie next year's hands. Right. Because they view a lot of value in maintaining flexibility going into the winter. And because they view that they have opportunities to win, this year, next year, and the year after.
Yeah.
To simplify and probably slightly misstate.
It is funny though to think that not this coming off season, but next off season, we could see some wonky deals being made. Some guys being signed to some weird contracts, thinking, "Oh, right, this is Lucha's last hurrah or whatever.
Right.
Let's see what we can get."
Which is why ultimately this line of thinking explains a lot of the Joe Aquini deal, of that there's a value of flexibility, and this isn't a all hands on deck, sign the best player that will come and show up on short notice. If you believe you've got 2 or 3 more years, you don't make a deal right now that's a bad deal. You make a deal that can get you through the year, the best deal that you can make that doesn't cripple your ability to do business in the next upcoming season. The interesting thing, too, is that he said, I don't have the quote right in front of me, but regarding the 3DP or the U22 model, that it also depends on who's available as a DP.
Yeah.
I am curious. I am curious how much of the 3DP model versus 2DP model depends on how much that second DP costs. And if you're bringing in a $20 million player, if that doesn't make the 2DP model and the U22 model more enticing versus if you're bringing in a $10 million DP, well, then maybe you've got more budget flexibility to bring in the second $10 million DP. I don't know how that works. That's ownership spend. That's ownership budgeting. No idea what that number is. He's certainly not going to say that publicly for us to figure that out. They got to play that close to the vest for very, very obvious reasons.
But he was very open on the question about whether they looked at some U22s.
Yeah.
That there was a fine. It sounds like, reading between the lines, I don't think too egregiously, there was like a finite pool of money, right? And they prioritized trying to get one of their main DP targets in. And those efforts, because you don't know how much money you're going to have to commit to get one of your main guys in, limited their ability to bring in a U22, because if you have, X dollars available to you in the window and you have to use like between 1/2 and 2/3 X to bring in a DP, you can't go ahead and commit, 2/5 X to a U22.
Yeah.
Which also kind of speaks to how they view the U22s, or how Albright views the U22s. Is they view them very much as a
secondary,
right? A butt
to DPs
or an not like the actual main course of the meal.
Yeah,
and I don't think you can
fault him for that.
I don't think you can fault it. I think you can't. I think that the principle you certainly can't fault, right? Like the idea that there's not unlimited money out there.
Yeah.
Is true. And then, so you can't fault that process without knowing how much money was available. Right. Because then you could evaluate, well, is that enough or not enough? Or like what U22s were available compared to the DPs, because you could be like, well, those DPs weren't super realistic, and these U22s are like absolute surefire home runs. I mean, like, or vice versa.
Right.
You can't really evaluate that. But I do think that it was very gracious of him to kind of lay that out.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of throwing up his hands and just being like, the right deals weren't available.
Yeah. People talked about it or even speculated. And I think Laurel even asked a question to this idea that, like, did did Bupenza make ownership gun shy about spending millions of dollars? To which he said, no, we had tens of millions of dollars floating out there, which I really like, which means that we had like multiple offers out there at the same time.
Yeah, he
bid
said,
on every house that comes up. One of them will come our way.
He said specifically, we had tens of millions of dollars floating out there all window for a bunch of different players.
Yeah.
And that's the ambition from ownership. It's my job, our job to execute on that ambition. And sometimes you pull it off to the level it's a home run. And sometimes you have to be patient and wait.
Yeah. But I would say a player like Isaac Atanga or a player even like Marco Angulo, I think that's more likely to make ownership gun shy. The Bupenza makes sense. Like you understand the bet they placed and you understand how the bet goes wrong. That's fine. But like the Isaac Atanga was a lot of money for a bet. To put it into perspective, Isaac Atanga was paid a transfer fee for Isaac Atanga. He doesn't get this money of like something like 85% of the salary budget to acquire the rights of a guy that
I think Atanga's transfer fee was
like $4 million,
close to or above Acosta's transfer fee.
Yeah, right. And you got a guy who was not good for FCC too.
Like, which is like we'll talk about this in the wintertime, but it's why I see no value in the U22 model because U22s are lottery tickets and the overwhelming majority of them are terrible. They never pan out. They're not value contracts. Even in FC Cincinnati's history, they've hit on one U22 with Barreal.
Barreal, he wasn't even originally signed that way. It was a designation that became available after he was signed, I think.
Right. Yeah. And like Kelsey is in progress.
Kelsey is the best player they've signed as a U22.
And if you look around the league, most U22s are terrible. Like you have like the burn rate on U22s is bad. Giving an extra U22 spot, it's you have to thread such a needle in terms of you're paying a transfer fee, but you also are limited in what kind of salary you can offer. And they have to be under a certain age, 22, obviously. It's just, it doesn't strike me that it's a priority for Albright to fill U22 spots. I don't get the sense that it is a big thing for him.
And he didn't mention it in why that model was attractive.
No, he mentioned it entirely because of the GAM.
He mentioned it to keep the TAM players together. And I don't want to spend any time debating in a vacuum the relative benefits of the DP or U22 model.
Well, I do
right now. Yeah, we can do that in the winter, right? Let's see what team he puts together. And then argue about like who we would drop to get another DP in. Yeah. Or maybe they ended up going the 3DP model. We still don't know. So the last thing that I wanted to mention.
Yeah. I've got one more thing as well.
Is that I think that I was feeling really bad after the last two episodes. Because I just felt like I had come across more negative than I felt, largely because of the conversational points that I was responding to.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes, you get into a conversation, right? And like somebody says something and you have a problem with that point.
Right. But you agree generally.
But you agree generally and you just want to argue with that like one point that you just nags at you.
I agree. You were a little negative over the last two episodes.
So
I'd even say 3 episodes, but only the 3 of us got to hear the secret third episode we didn't record after the last episode. Yeah,
I can't restate this enough. Like we spent another hour and a half on Zoom still arguing after the last episode.
Yeah, that one was much more of an argument too. I think people would have liked it more than what we actually put out.
But I think I was feeling I wasn't feeling great, I'll be honest, after either of the last 2 episodes. So what really made me feel gratified and frankly justified and vindicated was this quote. from Albright, because I think Laurel asked him, how does he feel about some of the fan discourse?
This is where I wanted to go as well. Yeah.
And I don't know what she was referring to. I know she has not listened to this podcast, so she must have been referring to some other stuff. But Albright said, fans are always justified.
Oh,
They're the ones that spend the money to come watch us play.
that
So
just
again,
encourages Chief.
you know how I state all the time, I understand what being a fan is and being and having public discourse about the decisions we make or don't make. That's what makes our jobs fun. And sometimes you're in the line of fire and they don't agree with what you do, and that's okay. They have that right. That's their right as a fan of FC Cincinnati. And, I say, Chris Albright, you're welcome. I'm glad that I get to make that your job is more enjoyable.
Yeah. I'm glad that you agree that I have a God-given right as a ticket buying member of the public to spew the absolute vilest hot takes known to mankind on a podcast.
God, I just thought of the worst idea, but this is probably the best podcast to bring this up on. So he mentions that we have that right as fans. Should we draft a fan constitution spelling out what rights we have as fans?
No,
only if we have a fan
if you
constitutional convention. I want a constitutional convention.
If you spell out fan rights, it implies that fans do not have other rights.
Ooh.
That's what the 10th Amendment is for. All rights not enumerated in the Constitution still belong to the fans.
I
No,
believe
they
it's
still
the
belong to
9th.
the supporters groups.
I think so. The 10th is the supporters groups. I think the 9th is
The people.
the people.
Yeah.
The people. Yeah.
I have no basis for that. I'm just making it up.
It would have been really funny if Albright would have said instead, if you're a fan and you're mad, don't boo, vote.
Yeah, so I just got to say that I'm glad to hear it, and I'm not going to feel bad anymore.
No, you should never feel bad. Welcome to the dark side. Incidentally, too, so I've met Albright once. I don't know the man. I've met him, but the overwhelming vibe I get from Albright is that as mad as Grayson was, and only Grayson over the last couple of episodes, I'll bet Albright was as mad too.
Yeah.
Maybe not like in the same level of mad.
Probably not mad at Albright, but yeah.
No, he wasn't mad. No, I bet he was mad at Albright. I'll bet he was mad at himself that, he is a hyper competitive dude. Hyper competitive. He still has a chip on his shoulder, I think, over the fact that he never got the credit that he believes, and it turns out probably deserved, for the work that was being done in Philadelphia, given the trajectory of the two franchises after he left. And yeah, I'll bet that as mad as Grayson and only Grayson was, I'll bet Albright was feeling a lot the same way. Describing being left at the altar, famously being left at the altar, not something you say when it's like, oh, everything was okay, I just got left at the altar, it's fine. Like, not something you say when it's a happy memory that you have.
We'll get him next engagement.
Right. And he's telling you, like, in not so many words, we're in the middle of a championship window. I think we have this year, next year, and the year after. And then it gets kind of, we don't know what the plan is, but like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
He's telling you they're in the middle of a championship window. He's telling you that the expectation is trophies, that they don't shy away from the expectation of trophies. And he's also telling you that, like, I didn't get plan A, B, or C across the finish line. And he said that's on me. He said it's on me to get that done. So yeah, I'll bet that after that hang up with Bertarame saying no instead of C, when instead of you coming in on the next flight, I'll bet there was some rage from Chris Albright in that moment. And as a fan, it's like I said, I just want you to let me believe the lie that you care as much as I do. I think Chris Albright cares, and that's why I think he's a great general manager.
And I think there's a part. I think there's a part of also getting used to him, still, right? Because it was like going from like negative 100 to 100, you know, with him. And then like like this was probably the first window that you could actually like say like was kind of disappointing, you know? And then to have him come out and give the press conference that he gave, it's just like, this is not your typical Cincinnati sporting executive.
Yeah.
No.
Well,
You know, and that's it's so nice to see.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll even add on to that and say everything you just said, absolutely true. And yet it was a consensus top 5 window in the league, according to every national outlet.
Like,
According to
just
people,
that's just
according to people
MLS
that get information from Chris Albright for their articles.
No,
fair enough.
it's MLS people that the only thing MLS people love more than MLS is other MLS players. And God, do they love Joe Aquini because he's an MLS player. Like, they love this kid because he's an MLS guy. Like, Joe Aquini, like, it's almost like he could go shoot someone in the street and MLS analysts would be like, yep, MLS player, 10 goal scorer. That's just the way MLS analysts are about MLS dudes.
Also, MLS media loves to reward like low ambition, like cheap moves. I'm not saying this roster was low ambition. I am saying the roster. I am saying that what you saw before the window opened, for what MLS media was suggesting that they do,
Right.
was low ambition.
Right.
Yes.
Like they were like, oh, they should get Andrew Farrell.
Or Matt Hedges.
They should get Matt
Hedges,
Hedges. Right. They were like MLS media was kind of uniformly saying, I'm not saying these are bad players by any means, but they were saying like, get guys struggling for minutes around the league, get veterans who can't get any playing time. And
Albright goes out and
Albright
gets
went out and got a guy who was better than Matt Miazga in Europe.
Right. Yeah. A Nigerian international.
A 35 cap Nigerian international who has played
Who's under 30.
Who's been a regular starter in La Liga, in Ligue 1, in the Portuguese league. You know?
Primera division?
They always change the name of the league depending on the sponsor, so I'm not gonna pretend like I know Liga NOS. I don't know. I don't know what it is right now. But like, you know, Al-Wazim was like far and away beyond what MLS media was suggesting that they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that just, it's like, maybe they shouldn't just be expecting contenders to be making moves like that, like they were suggesting.
Yeah.
It just feels like it feels like MLS media leading up to the window was just like managing expectations.
Right. It's like the old Chris Rock comedy bit. That's what you're supposed to do. You're taking credit for what you're supposed to do.
If you're gonna put Matt Miazga on season-ending injury and open up his budget slot, use it, and they did.
Yeah, it's true. Which is also, again, like if they didn't think that this was a potential year to do it, that's where a half-season loan of a Matt Hedges would have been like this year sucks. We'll try again next year.
I remember being so depressed that Matt Hedges picked Toronto over us.
Bullet dodged, maybe?
Hey, I don't want to say anything bad about it, but I do want to say that like
I will.
Fuck them.
They brought in Mascara, right?
Which he had himself a weekend.
Can we bring him back?
Yeah. There's a couple people that need their oil checked, I think, on Miami this weekend. Can we get Yerson back for one game only? The only other thing from this press conference I do want to point out is that so I had listed what I in the Discord, the questions that I wanted answered, because obviously I want everything to cater to me here.
Yes.
It's all about me. One of the questions I was very curious about was where the team saw Joe Aquini, and because there had been talk on Extra Time and on Tom Bogert's show with Dave Gass on Soccer Wise. Just gonna get there eventually. As soon as I remembered, but that there had been talk that there was an idea that they were going to slot Joe Aquini slots in to a starting position. I think Doyle's column also referenced that. The vibe I got from this press conference is that they see Joe Aquini as part of the striker room. I don't think that he has been promised a starting role. He certainly didn't say in the press conference or say anything in the press conference that led me to believe that he is going to be the locked on starter in this position. It was very much a vibe of, I'm here to contribute to the team. I'm here to do whatever I can. I think Albright said that, he gives us other options.
Yeah.
Which, so I think that if there was a question about where Joe Aquini is on this team, even though we put the moratorium on his contract status, I don't think that he is. It would not shock me if he started this weekend against Miami.
Yeah.
It also wouldn't not shock me if he didn't start.
Yeah. They gave him the number 9, which maybe they
was available
to, right? But they could have also given him I don't know what, 27. I don't know what's actually available, but it was good to give him the number 9 shirt there. We'll see what happens. And yeah, Chief, we could make that our transition point about does he start or not. We can bring that up in part 2. I do want to mention real quick, though, Pat Brennan asked about the 2 players on loan, Barreal and Angulo, and it sounds like they have no intention of ever seeing Barreal, that he will be sold either to the
someone.
team. Yeah, to someone, the team he's with or somebody else. Sounds like there may be interest in him, which maybe we see FCC trigger that weird withdraw him to immediately sell him clause that they have. The other was Angulo. Doesn't sound optimistic, but it sounds like maybe he comes back.
There's been some reporting on Angulo that would lead you to believe his loan is not going well.
Yeah.
I think either way, I don't think Angulo ever plays for this team again. I think that if he comes back, I would bet that he either is immediately loaned somewhere else or they work out some sort of a mutual termination and he can go
mutual termination or buyout even. I don't know what's available.
The last guaranteed year on his deal is next year.
Yeah. So
right. And it's okay. So mutual termination, which is MLS code for we pay you off the books and you go away, which
you take 80% of your salary next year to just
go away. Yeah. And then we don't use our buyout on you on that. Barreal, they have to sell just because they don't have the room for him in the salary next year. And they need that money on the GAM conversion in order to make everything work next year.
Yep.
Yeah. If he is not sold, this roster gets blown apart and this championship window looks very different because that basically they're banking on the $4 million in GAM. And if you're looking at all of the high TAM signings on that back line, you basically need the $2 million in GAM for the 2 DP model and the 4 from Barreal, and you can make it work. But without that 4 from Barreal, it looks very different. They
wouldn't be able to convert all that 4. I think they'd only be able to convert 1.8, I think, right?
Or no, next year there's a overall cap of 3 and change or something. But yeah.
I believe it's just 3.
Oh, is it 3 flat? Okay. So yeah.
So you can get it from 1 or you can get it from multiple sales.
So yeah. They're needing that.
Make that deal happen.
Yeah. And it may very well be they need it to happen at a particular point in time. So it counts as 2025.
You can float
GAM a few windows. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Except for the GAM bonus from going the U22 model. Let's not go this way.
Okay, let's drop it there, and also let's bid farewell to Grayson. Chief and I will preview the epic Inter Miami matchup this weekend, and that'll probably be the episode. So Grayson, adios.
I'm picking. I'll pick 2-1 Miami.
Well, at least you're consistent from the secret episode, and I appreciate that.
Fair but firm.
Bye, Grayson.
Let's head on over to part 2. Before we head on over to that next part of the episode, I do want to tell you about our friends over at Cincy Shirts, our dear, dear friends here at the Postcast. Believe it or not, our very first sponsor from way back when. And guess what? Not only are they good friends of ours, not only have they been doing FC Cincinnati gear from USL year 1, but these guys are also doing postcast merch. That is right. We have designs up on the website right now. Search Cincy Postcast. You can find our gear on Cincy shirts. There's also links in the description of this show. But if you don't like our stuff, and you know what, if you don't tell me about it, but that's fine. Okay, you can buy anything else off of the Cincy Shirts website or in store using promo code ThePostCincy. All one word, all caps. That will knock 10% off of your entire order. That works on Cincy Postcast shirts themselves. And you can check them out in person. They are in Oakley Hyde Park. They are in Fort Mitchell, and they are also in Loveland. You can print any shirt on demand. I know that from experience. I've been able to do it. Walk in there, ask them to make a design, any size shirt, any design. It's really, really cool setup to do it in person there in any of their 3 locations. So again, a huge thank you to Cincy Shirts for sponsoring this episode. And thank you, dear listener, for using that promo code. Again, the Post Cincy, all one word, all caps, 10% off your next order. All right, back to the episode. All right, we are back. Well, I should say some of us are back, Chief.
Doesn't it feel so much more positive with Grayson off the show? I can't believe how negative he's been these last couple of weeks. It's really been kind of, the vibe of the show has been weird with him being so negative.
I'll say at a minimum, there's more elbow room on this Zoom call. So I appreciate that.
It is weird, though, how only he has been negative.
It really has been. That
many people are saying
that Grayson was the negative one. And then I think I was trying to make sure we didn't drown in a sea of sadness. So,
yeah, you know, it be what it be sometimes.
Speaking of a sea of sadness, Chief, Columbus Crew just beat Philadelphia 3-1. Thoughts?
They go into the finals now.
This does put them into the finals, and with this victory, they are guaranteed CONCACAF Champions Cup play next season.
I hate this so much.
I think they were going to get there anyway, but
I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah.
I hate this. This sucks.
It's a bummer. It would have been a nice story and would have really helped the cope if Philly had won.
Right. That they stomped us en route to winning a title, but it just turns out that they played one more game.
Yeah. Yeah, because then I could have been like, oh, well, actually, Philly's really good, and they're turning it on.
They played one or two. They played 2 more games, right? They won a game in between us and this one.
No.
Wait.
Yes, they had to beat Mazatlan. It's just a shitty Mexican side that took them to penalties, I want to say. I don't know. I could look it up, and I'm not going to.
No, I'm not going to, because we hate the Leagues Cup. We've always hated the Leagues Cup.
Never liked it.
Oh, I don't want the Crew to win another trophy. I'm so sick of the Crew winning trophies.
Well, in a way, they have already won a Champions Cup spot, so we've got that going for us.
Nobody cares about the Champions Cup, though. It's just lame. Congratulations, you get to play Cavalier as part of your season ticket package next year. Oh boy.
That does take us to Inter Miami. Inter Miami's match, get this, Chief, lost to Columbus 3-2 in some tournament called the Leagues Cup. Ever heard of it?
We don't acknowledge the existence of the Leagues Cup any longer.
Yeah.
What do you? Okay, so I have I wish this game had happened last weekend, just because I felt like I needed to see this team play just to wash the taste of the transfer window out of my mouth a little bit. That I was positive about, but Grayson was not. I don't know what to think about this team right now. I just don't know where they're at. It's been a layoff. It's been a significant layoff, I would say. The health going into the game is going to be a question. As we record this today, the word out of Mercy Health Training that was sort of swallowed up by the Albright press conference was that Assad was not out with the team. He was indoors training, which is code for not match fit, will not be playing this week.
Not going this week. May not travel this weekend,
Yeah. Acosta was outside working but they didn't indicate that he was participating in team activities. He was just outside working, I believe.
Oh, but Pat Brennan gave us a description to end all descriptions.
Yes.
Lucho
Please.
Acosta looked sprightly training individually. So he is by himself. But he was not with the main group during the media viewing portion of the session. Sprightly Acosta.
Sprightly Lucho Acosta.
Does this inspire confidence?
That's like a Roy Hudson descriptor right there.
It
The
really
sprightly
is.
Lucho Acosta.
Gracefully blessing the field at Milford with his presence. Yes.
Yes. The hardest character to main in Secret of Mana.
Ooh.
That's a deep cut for you kids. Does not fill me with confidence that Lucho Acosta is not training with the team right now. We still don't have a great description of what is wrong with Lucho Acosta. The last thing we got as an update was that we're not saying what it is, but it's a pain management issue.
Yeah.
So are we still pain managing? How is the pain managing going? Is the fact that he's not training with the team the fact that the pain is too much? Or is it going to be the thing where he's in limited duty all year until game day in order to limit the amount of time that he is subjecting himself to re-injury? I just don't know. That sort of casts a shadow to me on trying to figure out what the hell any of these games are going to look like, right?
Yeah. I think this weekend will be telling as to what role Lucho is playing, and that probably indicates future use. I mean, the problem is, if this is still the year, this game matters. Like, if this team is going to win the Shield, they have to win this game. And I'm not saying they should go all out for the Shield, but let's say you've already decided that Lucha is going to try in half of these remaining games, right? Or a third of these remaining games. This is the one of them that you actually want him to try. It's this one, Columbus and LAFC. You take your chances with the other ones without Lucho, but those are the three you're going to need him. My guess is it's swollen ankle stuff, and I'd really hate to think that he might need some surgery in the offseason. But
yeah, I don't want to use the S word until we get more confirmation as to what's going on. I had heard it was a foot issue.
Yeah.
I'd heard specifically it was a toe issue. I don't know how true that is. I'm not a doctor. I'm not also subject to HIPAA, so no one's actually disclosed anything that's interesting to me.
Yeah, you don't need your toes, though. Like, that's what a lot of people don't know.
Many people noting, many people saying,
especially a player like Acosta. Okay.
So I'm curious about it. I'm looking at the standings right here, and it appears to me to be the case that we are, when I say appears, it actually is. In terms of points per game, we are third in the table in points per game right now at 0.192. In terms of actual table, in terms of the Supporters Shield, we are third in the table, sitting on 48 points. A win here would bring us to 51 to Miami's 53. We have a game in hand on LAFC or LA Galaxy, who is ahead of us. LAFC has a game in hand on us, 1 point behind us. I'm going to say this might be controversial, and I'm going to ask you your opinion on this. Do you almost wish that you would lose this game just to sort of put the Shield out of mind and then sort of set everything? Once you lose a game like this, you can sort of like, okay, we're not winning the Shield. Now everything becomes getting our roster and getting our situation settled to go for MLS Cup.
Yeah.
Because they're not well suited to win Shield. This is part of the secret episode, was us arguing how many more wins this team has left, because the schedule that FC Cincinnati has coming out of Leagues Cup is brutal.
It's pretty tough.
So the last 9 games of the FC Cincinnati season, I'm going to read them off to you right here.
Please.
So they have this weekend, they're at Miami.
Yep.
Then they're home against Montreal on Labor Day weekend. Then they've got a week off. and then they are at home for Hell is Real for Columbus. They're in Minnesota. They're in Nashville. They're home for LAFC. They go to New York for NYCFC.
Yep.
They're at home against Orlando, and they finish out the year in Philly. So Miami, Montreal, Columbus, Minnesota, Nashville, LAFC, NYCFC, Orlando, and Philly. Those are some really tough games. Really tough games. In the Supporters Shield standings, that means they're playing the team Columbus that's chasing them. NYCFC, where they never play well out there with that. Orlando is always tough. Minnesota's a good mid-table team. This team, Nashville, has its number for some reason. I don't understand why. Philly has been surging, even though they're kind of down on the table a little bit.
Yep.
Miami's the best team in the league currently. LAFC has gotten so much better at the window, like we talked about. They may be the best team in the league if Messi isn't available. That's brutal.
There's a lot going
on.
wrong.
We were talking about how many wins you see on that. I could see this team winning as few as 3 of the final 9.
Yeah.
I could see him winning as many as 6 or 7. But like the basement is there on this if especially if Lucho's health is in question, and just these games are going to be tough. So if you think to yourself and you look at that and you're like, okay, is this team going to not only make up the points difference on Miami, but also maintain for the rest of the year? It might be better just to let the dream die this weekend and focus on what's really important this year, and that's getting ready for MLS Cup.
So, yeah, and I'm reminded of a quote that Noonan gave. I'm pretty sure this was Noonan. I don't know. I wish I was just more confident about just spitting out things like that.
Right.
I'm pretty sure this was Noonan. But he basically said every victory, every match in the regular season comes at a cost when pursuing the Supporters Shield. Basically, like, they know that ultimately chasing that has a detrimental effect overall because you're not rotating as much and you're pushing harder every single game. And we saw last year that the team sort of ran out of steam and some injuries caught up to guys. Now, granted, things went wrong in the playoffs that were sort of separate to that, but maybe it plays a factor, right?
Right.
But at the same time, let's say we are going to rotate and we are going to take things a little easier, and we understand that, hey, you know what? All of this is about gelling and building towards the playoffs. And after LAFC, you've got NYCFC, Orlando, Philly.
Right.
Maybe those are the 3 that we try to, hit a good wave on and run into the playoffs with. But I would still rather see Miami, Columbus, and LA as measuring stick games. These are your playoff tryouts where losing isn't the end of the season. I want to see how good I am against these guys. Now, granted, if it's the difference between having Lucho the rest of the season and winning this game against Miami, rest him, keep him in Cincinnati, that's fine. But if he is able to go, I want to see what we look like against Miami in Miami, because if we want to win MLS Cup, we will probably have to win this game again. So,
yeah. But then if you think to yourself, okay, we're not, once you put MLS Cup out of mind, you can start to do things like, okay, what is our optimal lineup? What does this team look like? Is it time to finally just say, okay, we need Kevin Kelsey to play these remaining 9 games to see where he is at and if he's someone we can rely on in MLS Cup?
Yeah.
Or if the plan is to make, I don't endorse this in the slightest because it would be a bad idea. If the plan is to give Joe Aquini the job, then do we really care about results, or is the important thing to get Joe Aquini integrated into the offense for this run that he has been brought in to help with?
Yeah.
Is this where you put Kubo and Joe Aquini together, or Kubo and Kelsey together, and say, okay, time for you to figure some shit out?
Yeah.
Or if Acosta isn't going to be available, do you hand the job to Dotto for like 4 or 5 games and say, figure out what this looks like if this is what we have to do during MLS Cup playoffs? I mean, that's probably academic if Lucho isn't playing. I don't see this team winning anything if Lucho isn't healthy. But once the Shield is done, maybe you do shut Lucho down for a couple of weeks. Yeah. I don't know. It's so much of what happens to this team for the rest of this year kind of turns on this result. If you win, you can probably squint and convince yourself that this team can make a run at Supporters Shield.
Yeah.
If you draw or you lose, the dream's probably over. And I think there's positives and negatives to any outcome here. That's not to say I'm going to be happy if this team loses. I'll still be pissed off.
Right, right.
In the abstract, this game both really matters and kind of doesn't matter, because I think either outcome of any outcome of this game brings the season into more clarity. And clarity is good.
Yeah, I was texting a devoted listener of the podcast. I don't want to say fan, devoted listener of the podcast.
Tell your wife I said hi.
Oh, I don't think she's heard more than 30 seconds of this thing.
Mrs. Chief is not a fan of the podcast. She likes it in so much as that I don't have to talk about FC Cincinnati to her. It serves the same function for both Grayson and I, is that she doesn't want to hear FC Cincinnati talk. You can go upstairs and do that with your podcast friends.
That sounds right. But they asked about this Miami game: must win or can't lose, or is it a can't draw? And I know they were making a very funny reference back to an earlier episode, but I kind of think it's a can't draw. I need to know where this team stands for this back nine. If we beat Miami, it's a statement win, and it's a statement of intent to the league. And it's a, hey, you know what? You think we're wounded? We go to the house of the best team in the league and we beat them. We can take on anybody. What happened during and before Leagues Cup was an aberration. Go back and look where we won, 12 games and lost 2 or whatever. That's FC Cincinnati. We're the same team we were back then. You have to deal with us. Or we lose and we go, okay, this is a different ball game. We're playing for the playoffs now. Let's get everybody healthy. Let's get Kelsey and Joaquini start every game from here on out. We just see what we got. And we put...
Let's back off on that a little bit.
Let's see what we got. If they can't do it, they can't do it. Or, try out Orishano at the 10. Try out Assad at the 10. Try out Dotto at the 10. Let's just see what we got, right? And play around with it. So, yeah, I'm a fan of the can't draw. I've got to see something.
There must be a winner. We must have a winner. They should just agree to do penalties no matter what. Like we're gonna keep with the Leagues Cup rules. No draws. We need an outcome in this game. We will trade the point for certainty.
That would be really funny. If you could offer that to a team before the game and both teams had to agree, but if it's still tied at the end, do we agree to do penalties? And if one team backs out, fair enough, it's off. But if both of them agree, you'd see some really funny Premier League title races. Where you'd be like, no,
we're even on decision day where we're going to agree. We're going to PKs no matter what. It's all or nothing tonight.
We need a result here. Somebody needs a result.
We're going to take our destiny into our own hands. We don't want to draw and hope for help. We're going to go win this right now. It's
3 points for the win, 0 for the loss. Like that's you're not
all or nothing
getting anything back here. Yeah.
Miami, do we have any idea what their injury status is right now? I know that Messi is still going to be unavailable for this game, it looks like.
Yeah, so according to FOTMob, they've got a couple of guys that are injured, not least of which is Lionel Messi. The Ukrainian center back looks to still be out. I believe he was out when we played them last as well. I think the biggest question for me is, and I have not seen any reporting on this, is whether or not Luis Suarez will be allowed to play in this game.
Because of his missing the MLS All-Star game and the rule that says if you miss the All-Star game for any reason, you must be suspended for the next game or miss the next game.
They did not want players missing or, sitting out the All-Star game with a cough, and just so they didn't have to play in it and then could resume their regular season. There was a built-in punishment for teams or for players, but teams that were withholding players. And this is it. Now, is it a weird archaic rule? Did they quietly scrub it? Will they not enforce it against Miami? I don't know. Taylor Twellman tweeted about this. or maybe even just retweeted somebody that was speculating about this. So someone in and around the mothership is at least aware of the rule.
Right.
But I haven't seen anybody mention it. It's not mentioned in the unavailable and suspended players reports. I haven't seen that. So
it'd be nice to get some clarification from the league office.
Yeah.
Can the Post put in a request to MLS to ask for comment about this?
I don't know how, but yes.
What about Luke the intern? Can Luke the intern request from MLS that we get a comment on Suarez's availability for this match?
media@mlssoccer.com. Flood the inbox.
Yeah, why not? Sure, I'm sure they respond to a Gmail address. Why not?
That's probably Suarez's health or Suarez's availability. He is healthy, and Lucho's health are probably the two determiners of how this match will go. I think if Lucho is available and playing and healthy and Suarez is unavailable, I don't see why we couldn't be favorites in this, given the ass whooping we put on them previously. If Suarez,
and also given how well this team plays away from home.
Yes, historically good. Suarez is available and Lucho doesn't travel. Buckle up. We're gonna see how this goes. So
Could be tough.
I don't know how this goes. Chief, are you optimistic at all about this one, or are we feeling pessimistic?
Feeling a little pessimistic.
Mm-hmm.
I would feel better if I knew what Lucho's status was.
Yeah.
The other thing that's hard to quantify about this is that we beat the shit out of this team in the last matchup.
6-1, their biggest loss of the season.
People remember, and especially we poured it on a little bit. That's one of those ones where you circle that game again when you get a chance to give it back to whatever team it is, and they're playing at home. We're a little banged up. I'd feel better if we'd just beaten them a regular amount the last time. You get this. If it were me, I would expect them to come out with a little bit of piss and vinegar over how this went down the last time. So, yeah.
Maybe that's a reason to put Joe Keeney in. It's he doesn't have that bad blood. He wasn't the one pouring it on. So it's hard for them to get mad at him.
I don't think that they're going to have any difficulty getting mad at just the uniform, to be honest with you.
No,
I think the uniform
we'll confuse
alone will them. I don't know. I guess we should predict this.
Yeah, if you had to put a number on it, Chief, what are we thinking?
You're going to hate this. 2-2 draw?
That's not acceptable. So you're saying 2-2 draw.
I have a tough time seeing them. It's one of those ones where I'm going to need to see them win a game. Win a game against an MLS team. The NICFC game, it was nonsense in Leagues Cup. We were both through.
Did win it, though.
Yeah, but it didn't matter at the end of the day.
Yeah. It did.
They've lost their last 3 games in leagues play. I'm going to need to see the ball go into the back of the net before I'm ready to trust this team again. Yeah. So maybe they come out in this Miami game and it's okay, well, we righted the ship. Everybody got healthy. We're ready to go. We've refocused ourselves and look at all this great stuff we've been working on in the training ground. This is exciting. That sword formation thing, we've left it in the dust. We're back to what we did best, where we were winning all these games earlier on in the season, and maybe it's full speed ahead for the rest of the year. I'm going to need to see it at this point before I believe it's there anymore, because I do have some concerns about the health of the lineup and what it looks like going forward. So I'm going to say 2-2. I like to say that's me being optimistic about this team right now, because I could see this going very poorly on Saturday. A
draw in Miami is an objectively good result. Given where this team was and where this table is now, I'd agree with that. I will, just to round it out, I'll say a 2-1 victory for FC Cincinnati. Joey Keeney, game winner. Off the bench, but game winner. Do you think
he's off the bench?
Off the bench.
I would assume so, just because he hasn't trained much with the team. I would think that would be, it'll be tough on that. Who are your starting strikers then? Is it... All right, so question. Are we running the sword, or are we back to the 2 strikers? depending on your formation, who is up top or whomst are up top?
I'm going to say we are back to 2 strikers because Orishano is going to be your left wing back with Assad out and the apparent doghouse location of Brett Halsey. That means either Dado or Lucho as your 10, and I will put Kubo and Kelsey to start up top.
I don't hate that.
I think
that's probably the strongest lineup this team can field. And then at the back, Ian, Miles, and Cheeto.
Yes.
Obviously.
Yeah, I think that's nailed on with Yedlin on the right. So long as everybody is healthy and unsuspended, that's the back line from now until the end of next season.
Yeah.
Well, okay, hang on. We'll get Miazga back eventually. But
yes,
yeah.
I was about to say, no, you have to, unless you know something I don't know about how badly the surgery went. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's time. I think we got to see Kevin Kelsey in some of these games starting off. I think we need to get back to that. I think we need to get back to more play from the outside coming in, more crosses. It was a fun little run there, letting Luka be dribbly and cutting the ball in. We need to start whipping the ball in a little bit more off the outsides and getting some service to the strikers.
Yeah, I think targeting their center backs, which is a weak spot of Miami. Miami's conceded more goals this season than FC Cincinnati has. So
is that an argument then to maybe start Sergio Santos in this game to use his speed a little bit and go with Santos and Kubo as the striker pairing?
I doubt they run Busquets as a center back again. I think they probably brought in their new guy to cover that hole. Not that he's some world beater, but something to keep an eye on. But yeah, I see the argument for sure. Makes sense to me, but I think I'd roll out your best possible and see what you got.
Also, we should point out Pat Noonan will be suspended for this game.
Yes, yeah, I forgot to mention that.
Which is hilarious still. Just the dumbest thing imaginable.
So
do you give Kenny Arena the chance to manage this game since Dom Kinnear took the L the last time he was the interim manager?
Oh, did he lose the interim gig? That'll be funny.
Yeah, he's been demoted from interim manager because he lost that New York Red Bulls game.
Promotion and relegation with the managers. Yeah, and I say if Kenny can't get this done, Paul Rogers gets the nod next time.
Just keep on going down, yeah.
Why not?
You heard it here first, folks. The Post is calling for Kenny Arena to replace Dom Kinnear as the interim manager among the staff members.
Or does that raise Kenny's stock too high and he gets poached this offseason?
If you get like another 6-1 win, the magic of Kenny.
Ooh, that'll start the controversy. Did Kenny Arena just take this team over? Is it better without Pat Noonan?
This is what I wish MLS had more sports talk radio culture just for this moment right here. All right. Well, I guess we'll find out one way or the other.
Wait, Chief, before you end this, I've got to read a text message to you. I will say this text message has nothing to do with the Post or anybody who would ever possibly be listening to it, but it's a fun text message to read. It reads, your cameo request was sent to TJ Hushmanzada. We'll notify you when it's completed. Looking forward to this.
Is he doing the reading for the Streetside Brewery advertisement?
God, I wish. No, nothing to do with, can I guess I can admit it because if they ever listened to the podcast, they weren't making it this far. Forgot to give a friend of mine a wedding gift, like from a while ago. Huge Bengals fan. So I'm getting TJ Hushmanzada to record the apology, and then I'm Venmoing him a bunch of money. So
I have to go to a destination wedding in November. That might be really funny to get him a cameo as part of his wedding gift, because I'm not really buying him a wedding gift. My gift is my presents because it's so far away.
Yeah, you can't definitely don't expect a gift when you do the destination wedding.
Yeah,
but
no, that's false.
You are under no obligation to buy a gift, I would say.
Well,
but a cameo is kind of funny.
It always says nothing says I love you like paying a celebrity to say I love you. On that note, love you, Joey Votto, #1 in this city. Your money is no good in this town. If you are an FC Cincinnati employee, first off, why are you listening for this long?
Turn it off.
Turn it off. But if you're still listening, there are few people that would be better to pull the sword at the Labor Day game against Montreal. Canadian team. Joey's a Toronto guy. Everybody in Toronto and Ontario province, they all hate the Quebecers because they want to secede from the Canadian Union.
God, that is such a good call.
Yeah. So if you haven't already, someone make a call to Joey Votto to get him into town to pull the sword on the Labor Day game against Montreal. I think that would be an electric moment in Cincinnati sports culture to celebrate his retirement with a sword pull. So, yeah, that's my plea. Make that happen. Other than that, go fuck yourself, San Diego.